Welcome to Aim High Live. I'm your host and CEO, Jim Park. Today, we're honored to have Thomas Lee, Executive Director and CIO of New York State Teachers Retirement System. In this episode, Tom was kind enough to spend a little time with me and Lok Vukac with Pretium about NYSTRS investment strategy and the importance of Emerging Managers program. Additionally, Tom spoke with two rising stars and participants in AIM's Emerging Leaders cohort program, Tiffany Yu and Chloe Choi, about his career path and focus on public service. We have our esteemed guest, Tom Lee, with us today, and joining me is my good friend Lok from Pretium, and we're going to have a little bit of conversation about what's happening in Tom's life, in his work, his investment strategy. But one thing that I want to just point out, and I think we're all immigrants to this country, and you shared that story with us on stage today, which was very powerful. And I think we all have shared that immigrant journey. I came in the mid-'70s as a young child, and I was very excited. I remember being able to go to Disneyland on second day, and I thought this was the greatest country on earth, right? I didn't speak a word of English, but you also came during, it was the 70s?
Well, in 75.
75. That's exactly when I came.
Yeah,
So
4 years, 4 years before I was 4 years old, and it was 8 days before the fall of Saigon.
Right.
We were told to pack 2 suitcases, and fortunately a strong education from both my parents, and to live the American dream, which was very different than the messages that are unfortunately circulating today.
Well, the funny thing is that our family was supposed to go to Baltimore, so I actually would have maybe got to know you earlier in my life. My dad had a job there, but we landed in Orange County, California, for a quick visit to an uncle. And this was in mid-January, and the weather was perfect. And my parents said, you know what, we're canceling our flight tickets, and we're just going to stay here. So anyway, that's how we ended up there. But but all of our journeys are, immigrant journey. You go where you can, where the opportunity is, or maybe where the weather is. But you're here leading one of the biggest pensions in the world, and here supporting AIM and the work that we're doing. And I know, Lok, you have some questions about some of the business strategy evolving business strategy due to the pandemic. Not only the way you work, but I'm sure you're thinking, reshaping how you're approaching your investment going forward. I thought we'd just have some conversation about that and sort of share with our members, what your latest thoughts are. So, sure. Lok?
Well, Tom, I just want to good to see you, and I just want to thank you again. You've been incredibly supportive when we met 4 years ago with AIM, so thank you so much, as you've always been receptive of being helpful. For one, I want to say congratulations. You've had incredible consistency. This has been obviously an incredibly interesting year with COVID, good and bad. So out of curiosity, as your investment staff is wrapping up the year in terms of performance, how have you changed your investment strategies with respect to COVID, and also how have you worked together in this more of a work from home environment?
Well, thanks for the question, Lok, and it's a pleasure to be here with you and Jim. I think, last March, none of us would have thought that, at June 30th, which is our end of our fiscal year, that you would be at all-time highs. From the depths of last March to June of this year, it's almost like COVID didn't occur in the market. But it's been a well-funded plan. In terms of changes to our investment strategy, I love to sail, and I say that it's like trimming the sails rather than tacking, which is to change direction. So we undertook an asset liability study. We changed our asset allocation by adding 1% to private credit. And the rest of the program, we took it from real estate debt. So we did a swap. So I would say that's sort of trimming the sails. So for us, we're a well-funded plan. Our fiscal year numbers will be reported at the end of October. It'll be a good number within the range of what's been reported by other public plans. But for us, our considerations, our investment program has to ensure that we have sufficient liquidity to make benefit payments. A little accretive yield on private credit is always helpful, but market changes to our investment strategy that they don't occur. We trim sails rather than tacking.
As an emerging manager, someone who's kind of coming into this, raising their first, second fund, how do you do that in an environment like this? It's hard. Like it's such a blessing to be able to see people in person here, connect, talk to folks. But that's not an opportunity that people had for the last 18 months. Who knows how it's going to be going forward? I know there are some travel restrictions that people have, visitation restrictions. How do emerging managers get in through the door, at least so that they can have a conversation?
Well, for NYSTRS, we have an annual Emerging Manager Conference. It's held in January. We've held it virtually, but that's an opportunity for emerging managers to meet asset class heads and their staff. So I would encourage you to do that. And then second is, I said at the opening session that, just email me. Email me with your pitch book, and we'll make sure that it'll be forwarded to them.
Do you really want your email out there?
Sure. Yeah, it's public.
We'll put it right on the screen.
It's public. Yeah, absolutely.
You have this strong view around public service, that you are a part of the government that supports the needs of the overall industry and the public, and we appreciate that kind of approach.
But I would also say, what would differentiate you is, when we hear pitches, it's all about the strategy, right? This is the strategy, and this, I've been doing it for 10, 20 years. I just spun out of a asset management firm. I've started my new firm. Here's what we do. Here's our team. Here's our track record. That is all a given. What would really be impactful to someone like me is if you really understood the fund, right? What does NYSTRS need from a manager? I mentioned that we have a $7 billion payroll. So if you are a credit manager, to say, hey, you get accretive yields, but our cash flow from our strategy will help you contribute X to your cash flow needs. If you have a private equity program that has a program where you're investing in companies that are also going to be generating distributions at a faster rate than what you may traditionally see in other private equity programs, that would be really helpful because you understand that NYSTRS needs cash flow. So, it would knock my socks off if a manager came to me and said, Tom, let me start my pitch by saying, this is what I know about you guys, and this is how I can help you do your job. You never hear that. It's always, hey, Tom, this is my firm, and this is what I do. Yeah.
So this strategy is perfect for you.
Yeah.
They don't understand what you need, right?
Right.
No, I think that's a good point for any people, folks that are out there raising funds.
Yeah.
Just understand the people that you're pitching to,
Yeah.
the allocators, and what everyone has their pressure points and their needs, return thresholds, and I think just knowing those basics, right? I mean, that's what you do all day long, right?
Doing homework, doing the homework, reading
do your homework, and
read the notes.
Yeah, and being a public fund, there's a ton of information that's publicly available. Their asset allocation reports are publicly available, right? Their strategic plans are publicly available. There's so much information out there, but I find it surprising that managers don't do their homework because we get pitched a lot, right?
Yeah.
But I would remember a firm that had a pitch that the folks actually understood our needs.
Yeah. Well, so lesson number 1: do your homework.
Do your homework.
And make sure you kind of put your you sit in your side of the seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just understand what you need. I think that's a valuable advice. Lok, you want to wrap it up with the last question?
Sure. So there was a lot of conversation with AAPI in particular when it comes to the D, E, and I community. A couple challenges. One was the reticence that typically comes with the culture. You speak about humility and being humble, but yet sometimes that is difficult in a highly competitive world. As much as we send lots of emails out in what we do, not many CIOs are so open to actually receiving them and actually responding. You are an exception to that. What would be your advice to those that are in the business? What would be your advice essentially for those? And, there's many ways to be successful, but for those that need to be a little bit more forthcoming.
Yeah, I would say the virtual environment is a real challenge because one of the nice things about AIM and the other emerging manager conferences that public funds such as Texas Teachers, CalPERS, CalSTRS, NYSTRS, the New York Common, is that you actually get to meet face to face, right, and kind of establish a relationship. So I would say that in a virtual world, establishing that relationship is hard, and your email may just drop in. But I think there is also a benefit to leveraging folks like me, right? So certainly if I find that your strategy is sort of interesting and compelling, I would be happy to, if, for example, another fund was actually looking for a mandate to help you get the right introductions. And I think collectively the public plan space is we all want to be helpful. I don't think there's anyone in these seats who are in these seats because they don't believe in a mission-driven organization. So I think what Jim has done with the in-person, that is the key because that's how you build relationships, right? You actually put a name to a face and you actually get to spend time with them to really understand the other aspects of an individual other than just the role they're in. And so I am hoping that we go back to business as usual in in-person meetings. But in the meantime, in a virtual world, keep slogging. And if you need folks like me to help, sort of make a call to folks who are looking for mandates, I and other CIOs and senior staff, I'm sure, would be willing to do that.
Well, Tom, thank you for that advice, and I know it's there is no pre and post COVID exact timeline, right? It's going to be with us for a long time, and I think we made a calculation where we said let's create the safest environment we can and bring people together in a limited fashion, and I think it's been a very powerful thing for people to reconnect after about 2 years of absence. I know you have your own conference. Do you plan to have a virtual, stick with the virtual, or are you going to do it in person?
It depends on the environment because, right now our building is limited, but the first course is, the workforce sort of needs to be stabilized in terms of the work from home in person. So once that's done, I think folks will slowly start to open up. But the key to me, I think, is like this conference, you ensure that people are vaccinated, you ensure that safety protocols are in place, and then see how it lays out. Because our conference is so popular because February in Albany, New York is like the perfect time of year to come visit. It is.
Yeah, my sister lives right outside of Albany, and I have never actually visited her during wintertime. So, but I will for your conference. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to do outdoor events in the middle of. But Tom, with that, we look forward to seeing you in February, and we really appreciate you coming out and supporting this organization and all the great Asian American emerging managers that are out there. Looking to make a difference and build wealth for their community. So thanks again,
Thank you,
and I appreciate your time.
And thank you for the invitation.
I'm Tiffany Yu. I'm a senior associate with Palladium Equity Partners. I'm joined by
Chloe Choi, Vice President of Moelis Co.
I guess I'll kick it off. And Tom, you've had a really illustrious career, and importantly, a really common theme of public service. So we'd love to just hear your thoughts on, how that developed, and maybe any key mentors that you had along the way there.
Sure. Well, I think my public service commitment was really driven by my father. My father and mother are Korean in terms of their ancestry. And my father, back when I was 1 year old, moved from Korea to Uganda, East Africa. He ran a small clinic. He was a doctor, ran a small clinic in Entebbe. And we had a marvelous experience there. He made a difference in the lives of many Africans. And, for me, growing up there, I had experiences that were unique. So we still have, for the young kids in the room, you probably don't know what an 8mm movie is, but basically it's the modern version of a video. And I have pictures of the family vacations and safaris and, touring the country. So it was a marvelous experience. But unfortunately, there was a coup d'etat, and Asians and foreigners were asked to leave for Uganda. So we arrived in Ohio, and my father started in private practice, but then he went back to public service, and that has really instilled in me a commitment to public service. So my entire professional career has been in public service, and what I say is mission-driven, that what you're doing, it makes a difference for a lot of individuals. So, you are not doing it for economics, but you're really doing it because you can make a difference. And my current job is, we make a difference to over 430,000 lives every day. And they trust us to do our jobs, and that's a feeling when you are done at the end of the day that you're making really a significant difference to the lives and livelihood of thousands of New York teachers, a very special profession.
And being part of the immigrant and being part of the AAPI community, do you think that impacted how you developed your career or navigated your path here?
Well, it's really interesting because, throughout my career, I had a group of mentors that really helped me. Those individuals that you meet and they really put you on a different path. And my mentors really instilled in me confidence. So I think that's, when folks talk about mentorship, it's like they were confident in my abilities when I probably wasn't as confident myself. And they also genuinely looked out for my well-being. So, as an Asian American, I've always been the minority in any organization that I've been a part of. But despite that, I think the colleagues that I've had have all been very supportive of me and my career. And, to be in the position I'm in today, I am probably one of the longest serving CEOs and CIOs of a public fund of this size. I have a village of folks who help me every day to be successful. So there's a lot of folks rowing with me in the same direction.
And mentorship clearly has been a huge part of your career. How do you think about that within your current organization?
Well, I think it's really important. What we try to do is, I think early on in my career, I noted that, when you do the work and you don't have the opportunity to sort of present, it can get frustrating. So for the junior staff who work on deals, for folks who work on the member services side, if you're responsible for an area and are contributing to the area, I make sure that you're presenting before the board. So you could be a very junior staff and you'll have exposure before the board. And that's sort of a win-win for several reasons. One is the individual increasingly gets confidence in their ability at public speaking. and confidence in their ability that they can defend their recommendation. And then two, from the board and senior leadership perspective, you're getting exposed to individuals who are going to be the next generation of leaders of the organization. So it works really well, but I think part of being a mentor is that you have to be confident and be comfortable putting your professional credibility at stake by saying, oh, I know that Chloe and Tiffany can do the job, and I'm confident in it, and give them a chance. If things don't go well, it may reflect badly on them, but the way I always look at it is the glass is always half full. Have confidence, and folks will give their best effort.
Piggybacking on that, you have a soft-spoken yet highly effective leadership. I feel like a lot of the AAPIs are pictured as more reserved, a little bit more quiet, and thinks that you have to be that assertive alpha male and female to be effective and successful in this career. Is there any advice that you would give it to those individuals?
Yeah, I think you need to come up with your own leadership style. And there's more than one leadership style. And one of the best compliments that was ever made on my leadership style is my board president said, when you go into a board meeting, you would never know that you're the head of this organization. Kind of remarkable, right? That most CEOs, you definitely know that they're the CEO and just by their mannerisms, etc. But my style has been be humble. Don't self-promote, and give credit to your team. And that has been highly effective. I think that's sort of a benefit to Asians. We're very quiet, humble. You acknowledge that you are only part of the team, that you aren't the team. Whereas some leadership styles is it's all about the leader, and that's not my approach.
Yeah, and it's a great way to stay true to yourself, to your upbringing, to your culture, and you have that confidence now, and that's so key to being a mentor and driving culture in an organization. But for the times that you weren't always that confident, if you ever stood at a crossroads in your career, what would be the advice that you'd give to people, at a fork in the road, about how to approach things and, how to think through?
I would say when you're a fork in the road, don't think too much about the fork, right? Because, if you look at my career, there's no way that you could have planned it, right? I just, circumstances, certain junctures happen, and you just went with it. My big break was, I was staffing the Ways and Means Committee in Maryland, and the state superintendent of education said, Tom, I'd like you to come up and be my assistant superintendent for business. So you'd handle, billions of dollars in state aid, you'd manage 120 people, and before that I was an analyst. And she had the confidence in me to say, hey, I think you can do the job. And so that was a fork where you're like, holy cow, right? You're going to work with much more senior folks. And here, I was 32 years old at that time, I believe. So here you have a 32-year-old kid who hasn't managed anyone but himself, and someone says, hey, come up and I think you can do the job. So I would just say don't think too much about it. But I would also say, kind of looking at the Asian heritage, I am the only boy, and I have two sisters. And for those of you who know the Korean culture, the boy can be spoiled. The boy can be seen as walking on water. The boy is sort of the dominant kind of personality, I guess, at least in my Korean household. And I love the fact that my two sisters, I'm between them, kept me grounded. Because if they wouldn't have, I could see, you coming out thinking, wow, I am Superman. But, my parents, although they did exhibit some of the Korean cultural affinity to the male and all that is supposed to be, my sisters basically kept me grounded. And I think that is a testament, because I think I'm fairly well grounded. But growing up between two sisters who are smart, who are confident, who are very accomplished professionally themselves, has made me a better person. So I would say the message here is it's not about you. Some folks may think that it's all about them and it's because of their abilities, etc., that they are where they are. I don't think that's true. You are the result of life's experiences and also luck. So I think folks need to recognize that don't put too much credit. You may have worked hard, etc., to put yourself in a position, but there's other things going on. I don't know if you've experienced that with the Korean culture of the male dominated.
I grew up in that and decided that I wanted to go against it.
Right? And that's my sisters.
It was hard,
yeah.
But it works out.
Right, right. Yeah, because my kid sister went to an all-women's college, right? She came out even more of a whippersnapper out of that after 4 years there than she was going in. And I was like, I'd love to see that, right? Because, I think your family upbringing is so important. And at least in my case, my family upbringing contributed to be well-rounded. And that may not necessarily be the case in some Korean households, that the male comes out thinking that they are Superman.
True. Fast forward to when you joined NYSTRS, you mentioned that your predecessors said, don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up.
That's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. And, when I came to NYSTRS in 2006, I gave up my CEO job in Maryland and came up as the number 2 with the thought that when my predecessor would retire, there was no set retirement date, that I would be a candidate to take the position. And at that time, NYSTRS was, again, a very well-funded plan, 90+% funded. It was a plan that had no controversies. It was well-managed, had a very good brand in the market. The member services were top-notch. The investment program was, again, top-notch. So, that experience was very different when I took over Maryland. So Maryland, when I took it over, had some issues. I had some board governance issues, and investment performance wasn't great. In 3 years, you sort of built that up. So that situation versus coming to a very well-functioning organization was very different. But I think the lesson here is it's just as difficult coming to a great organization and keeping it great than it is to come into an organization that may not be as great as it can be and then try to build it up. So, I am a great fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And one thing that I note that's very similar is the Steelers have been very consistent over multiple generation of coaches, players, etc. And that's what I would say is a testament to NYSTRS also. We've been very consistent. We've stayed consistent in terms of staying out of the limelight, which may be part of my personality, right? But 2, our investment performance has been good, and we've remained well-funded.
And how do you cope with all these stress coming from making sure you're doing your job effectively?
Well, it's a 24/7 job, right? So you have a lot of pressures. But again, you have a lot of folks helping you. I think any leadership position, you have a lot of pressure, but it's about managing that. And my philosophy is, let's take care of the things that we can control, and the things that you can't, just manage it the best way you can once it occurs. Because you and I could spend all our days worrying about what could happen or what can happen. That's wasted energy in my mind. It's sort of like control the things you can control and just do the best you can, and the rest of the stuff, just manage it when it happens.
Well, very much appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I'm sure everyone will enjoy hearing this, and we look forward to seeing you again at another time.
And thank you, because it's wonderful to be in the company of such accomplished professionals and people. Thank you.
Thank you.